Today I wanted to talk about how my experience has been trying to heal from my anxious attachment / disorganized. I still am not fully sure if I'm just anxious or also have a bit of avoidance like mixed in there. I don't know, but I'm mainly anxious. I know that because I do identify with those more, but sometimes I do identify with the disorganized ones as well. But whatever. I went from that to a secure one. But also I have to say that I am not sure that I am fully healed today, and I don't want to come off here being like, yes, I'm perfect. I'm now the perfect girlfriend. I never get upset anymore. I never feel insecure anymore, because that's just not the truth. But maybe it's just normal also for a secure person to feel insecure sometimes. Secure person to feel insecure, that kind of doesn't make sense. But I guess it makes sense because we're all human and we're not perfect all the time. So I don't know. But I do have to say that I have healed. I feel better today. I feel more secure. I feel better. I feel like my relationship is healthier than what it used to be. And I feel like in general, I've become a better person in relationships, if that makes sense. So let's get into it. The first thing that I want to say is that I was in an abusive relationship with a narcissistic person way back in the time. And that lasted for like 3.5 years. And I was like the most anxious person that you can ever imagine in that relationship. So after that relationship, even though I dated around, there were like 3 years where I was not really with anyone, and I took the time to really like just sit there, read all the books on attachment theory and all of that, go to therapy, do coaching, do somatic therapy, all of these things to heal myself. And I was like, the next time I find someone that I really like, I want things to work out. I want things to be like the best they can be, blah, blah, blah. But something that I learned, and I think I talked about this on another video where I talked about my going from a toxic relationship to a healthy one, is that if you spend too much time being single and you don't go out and you don't date around and you don't try to practice all of these things on people, even if you don't really like them or even if you don't really want to be with them, you're gonna get into the shock mode that I went to, because as I said, I spent 3 years by myself thinking I'm doing all this healing work, I'm starting to love myself more, I'm better, and then I didn't feel anxious for 2 years maybe, because I wasn't triggered, because I was not ever with someone who would trigger these wounds, because my friends would trigger them in the past, but I healed that with my friends, through my friends, with my friendship dramas. But then the fact is that I didn't practice it with a real partner. So since I didn't practice it with a real partner, or I think I dated someone for a short period of time who was so healthy for me that he never triggered me, because he would just do everything that I wanted, which is also not a good thing, I have to say. But he was a really good person. But for 2 years after that, it's just I was never with anyone. I would like people, I would have crushes and all of this, but I would never really be with someone, because I was no, I'm just focusing on myself and healing, blah, blah, blah. And whenever I feel like I'm healed, I'm gonna start trying to meet people, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember there was this one time, I got Bumble, COVID hit and all of that. So I downloaded Bumble, Tinder and everything just because I was bored too. But I felt like I was in the place and time maybe to meet someone interesting, because I hadn't really met someone who I really liked in that period of time. And I remember I went out to a date with one guy who was in town for a week, and a Japanese guy. We went on one date. We didn't really talk beforehand because he was just there for the week, and he's like, well, I'm leaving in 2 days, so we either meet today or whatever. And we went to a yoga class together. Everything was just fine. The conversation was amazing. It's not that I super liked him or anything. It's just it was really nice to just find someone who was interesting to talk to and everything. And then he was like, oh yeah, I want to see you later again if you have time. If not, we can hang out tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And I remember that the next day he didn't text me, but he was probably busy because he was traveling there with a friend. And I just got the biggest anxiety attack ever for a guy that I had just met 2 days ago and that I didn't even like that much. So I was like, where's this coming from? I thought I was healed. I thought everything was fine. And that just shows that even though you might think you've been alone for a while and you haven't felt anxious, that doesn't mean you're healed. It just means no one's triggering you. And you need to kind of work through the triggers with someone. That guy obviously just left. I ended up not seeing him. He's like, no, I'm actually leaving early because of some work he had to do in London, so he left. But I was taken aback by how bad I had felt for someone who I just met, and I was like, why am I idealizing this person too much? Am I just not healed? Is all the work that I thought I did for nothing? Did I not learn anything? And I got really frustrated with myself because I felt well, it's done, I spent 2 years by myself. I haven't felt triggered, I haven't felt anxious, so that's it, like there's nothing more to be done. Like now I can just meet someone and just have the happiest, healthiest life ever, and we will live happily ever after, and I will never have a problem with this. Wrong. So I met my now boyfriend a few months after that. Like maybe I met this guy in like January, February, and I met my boyfriend in July, I think. Yeah, I think it was July. We met on Bumble, we went out, we had a really nice date. And after a few weeks of like actually talking to this person, actually liking him and everything, I started feeling the anxiety again. It's been 2 years and a half now, by the way, so to have like a bit of context on the relationship. But it's been a ride. I mean, I feel like now we've gotten to the point where I feel safe with him. I mean, I felt safe with him. It's not like he's a person who would not make me feel safe, but I think when we met, I would not say that I was like the most anxious person ever. I was kind of like in the middle. If you want to see those, like the attachment styles as a spectrum, and if secure was to be in the middle, he was probably a bit more on the avoidant side and I was a bit on the anxious side. We were not like maybe fully there, but we were halfway there because we both had our things and issues that we needed to like work on. But something that I realized over time from like everything that happened, like all the conversations we've had and everything, is what helped me heal the most is kind of like, first thing, allow myself to be anxious, because I think most of the times I always had this fear of like, well, if I have needs, I'm gonna just drive him away, I'm just gonna like scare him off, he's gonna think I'm too much. So I just allowed myself to be too much. At the beginning, not at the beginning, like not maybe for like the first like 8 months or something, but once I kind of like started to feel a bit better, because I was like, okay, this guy is staying, like he hasn't left, we have continued developing our relationship, and we have like talked about the future, and we both want the same things, and things have gotten more serious. And I remember there was a time where I was like, okay, this is actually like real. So I feel like I can slowly kind of like start showing more and more of myself. And I do think that at the beginning, I tried to play it off as like, oh, I'm the cool girl, like I don't need anything, I don't have needs, I don't care if you go out with your friends on the weekend and you don't call me, I don't care if you don't text me for a few days. But obviously what happens is like when you start to deny your needs, there's gonna be a time where like you will start to like accumulate, and one day you'll explode. And we did have something of the sorts happening last year. But the good thing about that is that even though I exploded in the worst way and I said really like bad and hurtful things to him, he was like, I'm so glad that you are telling me the truth and that you're coming off with all of these things, because I feel like now we can like talk about things and like work things through and everything, because like, and that's something that kind of even scared me, because I was like, why isn't he leaving? Like, why isn't he just like being like, okay, you hurt me, you did this wrong, like you're not perfect, so like I'm just leaving. And I feel like that was also surprising to me, because even though I do have confidence in myself, and I am a confident person in general when it comes to work and like maybe social media or whatever, when it comes to relationships, sometimes I'm just like, no, I'm too much, I'm a burden, I'm this, I'm that. But I guess that also comes from my attachment style, probably, I don't know. But I do realize that over time, like after we had this thing happen last year, I allowed myself to be more, because I was like, okay, he didn't run away after this, so I'm just gonna allow my needs to come out. And it is true that since I suppressed them for like a long time and I pretended that I didn't have those needs, there was a time where I was just so demanding, and I was just like, I want this, and he would do things right and I would ask for more, and it would always be more and more and more, and he would always get into this state of like, nothing is ever enough for you, nothing that I do makes you happy, like you're always like complaining about something, blah blah blah. And that also made me realize to be like, okay, I know that I'm not asking for too much, because you will always meet a person who can give you everything that you need. But sometimes when you come from like the anxious side, you will always be looking for problems, not because you actually need all of these things, but because you are like, I think we are like fixed in this mentality of like, there has to be something that I need to fix, because if I am looking for problems that I need to solve, that means that there's something for me to do. Because another thing that I've realized as an anxious person, maybe does not apply to all anxious people, but I realized that I felt like if I was with a partner that I had to fix, that I had to like nurture, that I had to help him to be better or something, because I was like, oh, I'm anxious, but he's avoidant and I'm more aware of like the feelings and everything because he avoids his emotions, whatever. I need to fix him and I need to help him and I need to blah blah blah. And over time I realized like that was not the case, because like, yes, he might have been a bit more avoidant, because he's not fully avoidant, he's just like a little bit, just like right there. He does know how to like feel his feelings. He does know how to like work on himself. He does know how to do things. And I remember there was a time where I even like felt useless. I was like, what's even the point of this relationship if I'm not here to fix him? And that also took some time for me to kind of like settle down and be like, okay, this is not your job. Like, your job is just to enjoy each other and like maybe learn from each other, grow together and all of that, but you don't need to fix him. I mean, there's going to be obviously times where like maybe he's going to give me advice, maybe I'm going to give him advice to be like, oh, maybe you could do this better or something. But in the past, I feel like I over fixated so much on fixing my partner, and I thought that that was my job and that was everything. And that also left me really drained, because when I was with like my narcissistic ex, I was constantly trying to fix him. I was constantly trying to like help him because he just couldn't do anything by himself. And that just left me drained. And I remember those like first year and a half that I was with him where I just didn't have the energy for like my own projects and my own things in general. And I wouldn't kind of really like advance in life. And at some point I do have to say that that got me really frustrated, which is why I started going to therapy, because we had a lot of drama going on. And when I started going to therapy, I did start to set boundaries. I did start to be more of like, okay, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to start going after my dreams and my life and everything. And that made me realize something, is that once I started to focus more on myself, be a bit more selfish, be a bit more, okay, I'm going to not like worry too much about this other person. I'm just going to be myself and just go after the dreams that I have. And I started going after them. I realized like every time that I tried to, or I was advancing in life, either my boyfriend, well, my ex was trying to like hold me back, or either I did like hold myself back through him, if that makes sense. Like I would maybe, let's say like I didn't have this channel back then, but this is an example that happened to me afterwards as well. Let's say I was editing a video for the YouTube channel. The day was perfect. We would have had a perfect weekend before that. Everything was fine. I would be editing, and in the middle of like nothing, for no reason, I would be like, he's cheating on me. He has to be cheating on me. That would make me stop doing what I was doing, which was focusing on myself, and just start over fixating, then getting mad at him, then starting a fight, an argument, and just creating this like turmoil, you know, and just like spent the next 3 days like so tired, because like emotionally, like my nervous system like just needed to get triggered, but also was like, I just can't do this anymore. And I would do this quite often, and he would do that quite often as well. So I feel like we both, or I feel like anxious and avoidant people, maybe this is just a theory that I have, but I feel like we both, anxious and avoidant, also use this kind of like as a self-sabotage to like not move on with their lives. Because I realized that whenever like my relationship right now has been like stable and amazing and nothing has been happening, like everything is just fine, I will realize that I have such fear of like for me to go after my dreams that I'd rather just create drama in my relationship so that I have like an excuse to not be working on myself and going after what I want, because like it scares me to be successful. It scares me to like accomplish everything that I wanted, because I'm like, what if I don't make it? What if this doesn't happen? That I'd rather just be creating drama in my relationship or somewhere else to kind of like entertain myself with something, so I don't have to face the fact that I have other fears, you know? So I feel like maybe these attachment styles also kind of happen because of this. I don't know. I'm not saying that they do, or maybe they're just like another way that we self-sabotage. I'm not really sure. But something that I've realized is that the past 2 years since I've been with my now boyfriend have been like a time where I started like really working on myself, really working on like going after my goals, like quit my day job, started doing YouTube, started doing like social media and a lot of other things that I really wanted to do. And he's always been encouraging of me. He's always been like, go do that, you rock, if you feel like you have a message to share, just do that. I 100% support you and everything. And it's just weird that I don't have like that negative energy, if that makes sense. Because the thing is, like, my parents also gave me that negative energy of like not supporting me. And my parents to this day, because I live with them, whenever I say like, yeah, because I'm gonna be a millionaire one day, or I'm gonna like be really big on social media, they're like, oh no, you're too old for this because you're 29. Oh no, these other girls from your school already made it on social media, they have 3 million followers, like what do you have? And I feel like in some way it's kind of like weird for me still to have a partner that supports everything. I mean, I also have friends who support everything that I do, but especially like when it comes to like the attachment style, I feel like having the partner that kind of like goes against everything that my parents have done in that sense just shows how like the attachment style that I have to my parents, which is anxious because they would just not give me everything that I needed, or avoidant sometimes because my dad was also like a little bit absent emotionally and all of that. It just created this like inner drama inside of me that It's taking a long time to fix. But yeah, as I said, what helped me with him to fix this is, first thing is just being being too much. Because I think as an anxious person, it's not that we are too much sometimes, it's that we perceive ourselves as too much and we don't allow ourselves to have needs, because we're like, oh, in the past my parent wouldn't like take care of my needs, so since they wouldn't, I'm just going to pretend I don't have those needs. But the more I've just allowed with my boyfriend to have needs and just be like, oh, I actually need this, or I actually would like you to do this, or I actually would this and that, it's gotten better. Because even though he might not have like fulfilled my every need, because that's also not his job, because there's another part of like, I've always had this feeling of like my partner needs to save me, and like he is the one responsible for like my whole happiness, and that's not okay either. Just expressing those needs sometimes has made me feel okay, maybe I have this need of like validation that the person around me tells me like, oh, you're amazing, oh, you're pretty, because I really I love words of affirmation. But once I started to kind of like voice that need, I just also realized like, okay, this is not something that just my partner can give me. This is something my friends can give me, my sisters, I can give myself. So when you find the balance of like all the people around you giving you that, it gets better. Because I think in the modern world, we've kind of like put all of these expectations and like all these needs on a partner, when like in the past, I guess humans, we lived in tribes and like little communities where like you would rely on your partner, on your neighbors, on your friends, on your family, and you would have like a support system where like all of it gave you something and they all nourished you in like a different way. And right now we just place all of these expectations on a partner, and that's just not realistic if you think about it. Because it's like, yes, someone can fulfill your every need, but that also creates like maybe a little bit too much of codependency, which also brings me to something else. When I was doing my whole healing journey in attachment and all of that, I do have to say that since I had been codependent in the past with my ex, I was like so afraid of depending on someone, because I feel like you can go codependent, but then you can also go hyper independent, and that's also not healthy. And you need to find like the good middle of an interdependence, which is kind of like you can depend on someone else, but you maybe also need to be able to do things by yourself, that happy medium in between. And since I was seeing so much advice on TikTok, on social media, from friends, from everyone, was like, no, because you're a strong modern woman, you should not depend or rely on anyone, blah, blah, blah. That's also something that added to the fact that I was always afraid to be like, is this too much? Like, is this a need that I am allowed to have? Is this something that I should ask him that I want? Like, for example, if he wouldn't text me for a day or something, like, is it me that I'm just like, not, like, I'm just being too needy, I'm just being this, I'm just being that. And over time I realized, like, no, first thing is that you need to realize that if you're going through something like this, don't look at advice from people who are not you, because maybe you need your boyfriend, your partner, whatever, to text you once a day or twice a day, or maybe you need to have constant communication during the day, and someone else will have like communication every 2 days, and that's fine, because it really depends on like your safety zone, like the things that make you feel safe. And I think also that over time, when you come, especially for me coming from an anxious place, over time I've gotten better at like tolerating less levels of communication, because I feel like when you start out and you have like a lot of issues and maybe they go really deep, maybe I still like to talk to my partner every day, but now I'm in this place where I'm like, okay, if he was gone for a trip, if there was something happening and we wouldn't be able to talk for like a day or two, I wouldn't like get too stressed as I would have in the past, like now I would be able to tolerate it. Do I like it? No, I don't like it. I do want to talk to my partner every day, because that's just me. I don't want to say clingy, because clingy has a negative connotation, but you know what I mean. I just like I'm a very affectionate person, so I like talking to my partner every day, getting my good morning text, getting my good night text, and all of these things. And actually that's something that over like in the first like 8 months of our relationship, I would not get good morning text every day. I would barely get them, and I would tell him like over and over again, like, hey, I would like this, but he would just not really understand why I needed this. And over time this has gotten really better, where like right now, like once he kind of understood why I needed them, he was the one who started also saying good night, because I only asked for a good morning text. Like I never expected good night text, because I'm like, okay, whatever, we have different schedules, I don't care. But over time he also like started doing good night text, so I was like, okay, so we, this is actually like improving, and we're kind of like figuring out our needs as we go. And I think it's also been a growing thing for him, where he would not like to depend on anyone. So I kind of like had to take his needs and kind of like take them out of him to be like, what do you need from me? Because he would always be like, no, I don't need anything from you. Like, I just enjoy you. I just want you to be yourself, blah, blah, blah. But over time, like, his needs have been coming out. And I feel like that's something that happens with avoidant people, is like, they have needs too. They just don't know how to identify them. They don't know how to ask for things, or they're afraid, like, they're really afraid of asking for things, which makes me do something else. I think that most advice that I've seen on social media when it comes to anxious avoidant people is that we anxious people are the victims, and avoidants take advantage of us, and that they are the bad people and we're the good ones. And that's not true. Like, avoidants face problems like we do as much as we do. We just like express them differently, because they might need space and we might need closeness in certain moments, but that doesn't make them better or worse than we would. They're just different, you know? And at the beginning, I remember seeing it like, no, because I'm the anxious one, so I need someone to kind of like, if we have a fight, I want you to talk things right now. And he would be like, maybe I need a little bit of space to kind of like clear my mind. And I would be like, no, but my needs come first, and you need to be here for me, because if you take your space, then you're taking what you want and I'm not getting what I want, which I think is not fair. And I still totally agree with this, but it's about finding the happy medium for both of you. Because if he's also like there for me when I need it, but then he's like neglecting his needs, that's also not fair to him. And over time, I've realized that both of us, like anxious and avoidant, we both want intimacy. It's just like we're both afraid of it in different ways and for different reasons. And avoidants are not worse people than anxious people are. We're just like express things in a different way, or we need different things and we just need to adapt differently. And so I did a lot of research on avoidance, how to understand them more, how to be more empathetic to them, because I feel like most pages are just like dismissing avoidance and being like, oh no, they're just trash, and just like never get like close to one, when they're just hurt people as we are. And we just need to find a way to balance things out. And I feel like actually like there's a lot of like psychologists and things where like, no, the avoidant anxious dance is like the worst thing ever, because we usually like attract each other. But I feel like we attract each other for a reason. We attract each other because there's a lot that I can learn from an avoidant and he can learn from me, to kind of like find that happy, secure medium for both of us. And we can actually teach each other a lot of things if we're both willing to grow. So I don't think, I've seen a lot of people say like, oh no, a relationship between an anxious and avoidant is impossible, when I think it can be the most amazing thing ever if both of them want to work on it, which has been my case so far. Because I've learned to be a bit more independent, I've learned to be a bit more self-reliant in like a healthy way. And he has learned how to like ask for things, how to be more needy like I am. And I say needy in a positive way. I don't want to say it as a negative thing. But he has also learned to kind of like lean on me a little bit, ask for things from me. And, you know, we've kind of like coming to like a good medium where like right now I just feel so safe in my relationship, which is something that is unheard of for me. And the last thing that I want to mention on this is trust. I've been a distrustful person, but because my ex, the narcissist one, kind of cheated on me. Not fully, but like emotionally cheated on me, which for me is worse. And the thing is that always made me very wary of like the words that are used between people and everything. And I was like, I don't want anyone else to do this to me. So I would just jump at like the smallest little thing that my boyfriend or anyone would do, because I would be like, no, this is cheating, or this person wants to cheat on me. Or even if nothing happened, I would always kind of like expect it to happen, because I'm like, why would this person want to be with me, you know? So it's taken, for once, obviously telling him all these like fears that I have, because I feel like that's something else actually, that a lot of people are like, no, because if you want to be a woman and you want like to create this attraction between you and him, you need to like never tell him like the things that make you weak, when it's not weak. I feel like being vulnerable is part of our relationship. I feel like being vulnerable and communication are like the two most important parts of our relationship. So whenever I allowed myself to tell him my fears and be like, I actually am afraid that you might cheat on me, I'm actually afraid that you are gonna break my trust, that you're gonna do this, that you're gonna do that, he would be like, oh, do you want to go through my phone, do you want to do this, like here it is, you know? And he gave me everything to be like, if you want this, like you can just like have a look, like I don't care, because I just want you to feel safe. And Obviously, if you're not with the right person, people can use all of these information to go against you. But I feel like if you're in a relationship where you already think that, maybe that's not the right place for you to be in, because I feel like in a relationship, you should be able to feel vulnerable and to like express whatever you have in your mind, you know? And that's something that whenever I've had doubts in the relationship, I've felt like I could express them in a way where like I would not be judged for them. And I also tried not to judge him whenever he has doubts, you know, because when there's been moments where I just started getting commitment issues and feeling like, what if I don't want to be with this person? What if I'm getting afraid? What if I'm not ready for this type of commitment? Because over time, the more and more we spend time together, I'm like, do I actually want this? Do I this? Do I that? And then we would sit down and I would just tell him like, I actually am doubting this and that. And he was like, oh, I'm actually doubting this too. And then we would talk about these things that I know in the past would have made me feel so insecure to know that maybe my boyfriend was doubting this. But right now I just don't take it personally. He doesn't take it personally either. And it's like, it's normal to have these doubts, and to actually kind of like be able to share them and kind of like have this experience together is beautiful in my opinion. And I am like, when I think about this right now, I'm very proud of like how, like the way that I have come with all of this. And I probably have still like a long way to go, but I feel like I'm now at a point where I could only dream of being here when I was like 10 years younger, like 19 or something, when I was starting my first relationship. So it's a matter of honestly just finding a person who feels safe to you, that you feel like you can express yourself with this person and just like get it all out. Because I feel like obviously don't get it all out on the first date, but once you start like hanging out with this person and you know that you like them and you feel like they're safe and they're a good space for you to kind of like bring like share your trauma and whatever with them, it's like the right relationship is going to be like a healing space for you, and it's going to be a practice field for you to kind of like get your shit out, work through it, the other person get their shit out, work through it. And also, but this is like a little disclaimer when it comes to this, because I know that I've done this more than once, especially like a year ago. I would expect my partner, like whenever I brought a problem up with him, when it was like one of my problems, like one of my childhood trauma things that I had inside, I would bring it up and just expect him to fix it. And that's not how it works. Like I would rather say, if you're working through this, that when you bring things up, it's easy if you just explain it and then you try to work it by yourself. And if the other person wants to help, like that's amazing, that's fine if they want to do that, because that's one of the jobs that they have, but they might not always be there or have the capacity to be helping you, you know? So one thing that I've realized is that sometimes I would get triggered, and whenever I got triggered, for example, like something happened that triggered my insecurity, my jealousy or something, if instead of just reacting, because that's another big one, and that's something that a friend of mine has also been going through with her boyfriend right now, is that when you start reacting, also kind of like think, okay, am I reacting from this present moment of like this thing that, oh, maybe a girl looked at him and he just looked at her and then nothing else happened, they crossed eyes in the middle of the street, for example, and that's like nothing because that just means nothing. Or are you thinking about when your ex crossed eyes with a girl on the street and they actually knew each other and they actually had been flirting or something? Because if you react in the present moment to this old situation, your partner's going to be having to like deal with shit that doesn't really belong to him. So it's better that if something like this happens in the present moment, you're like, okay, I just felt really jealous because I saw this thing that just happened and it reminded me of this time, blah, blah, blah. So that your partner is also kind of like prepared and ready to any outburst that can happen that is not really directed at him. Because I feel like that just makes it easier to deal with. It's like, if he was to tell me like, oh my god, you never listen to me, because he's talking to me and I'm taking my phone out, I just start looking at my phone and he's like, oh my god, you never listen to me, and then he just explodes out of nowhere, I'm gonna be like, whoa, where's it coming from? But if he tells me like, hey, if you're looking at your phone while you're talking, it just makes me feel really insecure because of this thing, then I'm just gonna be like, okay. And if he after that explodes, I'm just gonna also know like, this has nothing to do with me, this has something to do with like his past, and I just need to maybe be a bit more attentive when I'm listening to him, you know? So yeah, I know that this video is a bit all over the place, but I just wanted to explain my experience for anyone who might be going through something similar, who is healing. As I said, like I started with my boyfriend like 2.5 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. But I feel like, and I'm not saying that it's gonna take 2.5 years for anyone, I'm just like, I was still very wounded when I started out with him, even though I thought I had healed. I had like maybe healed like a 10%, and the rest of it has been done in the relationship. And I feel like that's where most of the healing will happen. So like, if you're single right now and you're like working through these things and all of that, just a reminder that you're not going to be doing much healing after, like you can heal to a certain point, which I think is like a 10 or 20%. And after that, you need to kind of apply what you learn in a relationship, because if not, like, you're not really going to be practicing, you know. It's like if you study, I don't know, medicine in school, and you like study medicine for like 15 years, doesn't matter, because like if you study medicine for like 5 years, you will have everything that you need, but you will need to start practicing on like actual people. If you study medicine for 15 years, you're not going to be more prepared to do that, because you will have just extra 10 years of like wasted time, where like you will go into practice on a person and you will be as prepared as you were like 10 years ago, because you only needed 5 years of experience, you know what I mean? So obviously take your time. If you feel like you are still like fresh out of a relationship and you still want to work through certain things, work through them, go to therapy, do whatever. But I feel like you need to also, like, once you feel like you're ready, like after a few months, start practicing, start going out, start meeting people, and start also, even if you're just going out and or getting Tinder or something to just practice things, you can also just do that even though you don't like the people. You just use them as your practice field, if that makes sense. Not that I ever did that, but I know that some people around me did that, to be like, okay, I'm just gonna go out with like the expectation of like making friends, and I'm just gonna see how I feel, and I'm gonna see how I feel about setting boundaries and all of these things. So I hope this video wasn't too long. I don't know how long I talked, but I feel like I talked for like a long time. But I hope someone benefits from this. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you guys next week.